Paula Jean Hixson grew up in Portland, Oregon, and moved to Montreal, Quebec in 1989. After a few years in the fashion industry, she returned to school, receiving a B.F.A. in theater performance from Concordia University. Since then, she has been performing in theater, film, television, and voice and video games. She is a dual citizen of the U.S. and Canada. Paula Jean Hixson, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
You've done work in both theater and film. Which one of those would you say that you prefer?
That question actually gets increasingly more difficult as I get older because I haven't, I've been focused so much the last several years on more film, television, and voice, and now kind of getting into writing, and my writing is definitely more for film and television. But I really do miss the immediacy, of the performer audience interaction. I really miss the process of theater. Like, even though rehearsal times have been steadily cut down, from like a luxurious 5 weeks down to, sometimes you're putting up a show in 10 days. But the intimacy of the process of theater with the director, with everybody, for that amount of time, even if it's a short amount of time, it just is so, it's really gratifying. It's like this, I kind of liken it to a really intense, like, one-nighter, or something, because you make such deep connections with the people that you're working with so immediately, and then you're done, and then you all disperse off to other things, and then you have some post-production blues and stuff. And the whole film and television is a little more, unless I haven't done a lot of, I haven't been a lead of a show, so I think maybe that experience is a little bit more present and involved for the top people on the call sheet. But when you're coming in and you're doing maybe a couple of episodes and you're maybe only on a shoot for a few days and you're kind of in and out, it's a little harder to make those connections with people.
Right. I can. Yeah. So I kind of, when I was setting up the interview, I was sort of thinking that theater, for me, it would be the difference between when I go and speak to a crowd of people as opposed to doing this show. Because when you're in front of a live group of people, you can kind of gauge how you're coming across. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can kind of feel the crowd, the energy, and it's a lot more difficult when you are recording something for later release. It's you don't get that immediate feedback from your audience. Yeah. That would be, I could see how that would make things a little bit more, I don't know about difficult, but certainly change the dynamic.
Yeah. And there's also a certain amount of, I also really love the control that you can have with film and television, because that's, anything can be changed in an editing room. Right. There are so many other things. I mean, there are set designs and lighting designs in theater as well, but really you can make the camera movements and the props and the sets and everything really be strong characters in a piece, and really paint a different kind of picture that is a little bit more nuanced and stuff than you can with theater. So there's great things about both.
Yeah. So when you're on set, during rehearsal, whatever, there's a lot of downtime. How do you fill that time?
I usually have either with a book. So there's a lot of book reading. But then sometimes if I don't want to just spend a bunch of time in my trailer, or if we're on location and we drive to set and it's not where base camp is, then I generally kind of try to connect with the other people who are on set, whether those are, there might be extras that are in the scene. It might be a PA who's just kind of, wrangling things. And, there's some pretty interesting dynamic people on set all the time. So I might kind of connect with one of those people or two of those people, or get into a group or get into a conversation. I kind of feel out what's going on the set, and I try to see if I can figure out like what the whole dynamic is. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on. I'm also getting more into filmmaking. So, and all of my experience has been, in front of the camera or on the stage. So it's a completely different beast behind the camera. And I haven't gone to film school. So there's really a lot to learn as an actor about what goes on behind the scenes. And I kind of fill my time with that. And then if it's a really long day and I'm tired, I meditate.
Yeah. I can see while I was doing the research for the interview, and we talk about what an inquisitive, curious person you are. So I can definitely see you on the film set looking around, what's going on.
Like, oh, that's how they're moving that. Oh, okay.
Taking notes for your own future productions, that kind of thing. Exactly. Yeah. So I can see that's what I would do.
Happening in the scene and everything like that. Right. That looks terrible. And then being able to kind of go to Video Village and see like, oh, that's amazing.
That's funny. So you have been pretty busy lately screening an award-winning action comedy short film titled Are You My Mommy? Could you tell us a little bit about that film?
Sure. Yeah. We're actually screening here in LA again next weekend at the Artemis Women in Action Film Festival in Santa Monica. So
awesome.
We're pretty excited about that. It came to be when in the months after the 2016 election.
Those. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, those. Yeah. But in terms of all of the women's movements, the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, and my own experience, because I was in my late mid 40s when my husband and I moved down to LA from Canada, and sometimes it feels like, what were we thinking? I'm 47 years old. I'm not gonna make it. So I had those thoughts, absolutely. But also just seeing how true that dynamic is, and how that's kind of playing out in my own career and in my own life, and it really becoming clear, like, oh, I'm just gonna fade into the background, which, I'm already kind of in the background, but I'm really going to fade into the woodwork if I don't start making my own stuff. And so I had already started a little bit of screenwriting with some partners on a series a few years before. And there was just sort of this well of a need to create something, a need to kind of say something from my perspective, from my voice. I wanted to address what I was going through, but I wanted to do it in a really accessible way. My humor kind of bends towards, I really love Arrested Development, and I like kind of absurdist comedy that has some dramatic elements in it that maybe sometimes breaks the fourth wall, or
right.
Just kind of oddball comedy like that.
Sort of like The Office. Would that be another? Similar,
stuff like that. But I didn't want it to be. I also didn't want it to be mockumentary. And so I was like, okay, so what's the seed of like what would happen if somebody like me were an action hero, and what would that look like? And then the bigger question for me was, man, what if we just took over? Like, what if we were just a whole bunch of underrepresented people who just got sick of it? The revolution is here. And what would that look like? Like, what would that look like in the film and television industry?
Awesome.
So that's the viewpoint that I wrote it from. And so that was the script that came out. And I let my husband read the first few pages, and he was like, and I was going to write it as just a scene that we were going to do together, that I was going to kind of practice directing a little bit, and it was going to be very self-contained. And then my husband read it, and he's like, this is really funny. You have to finish writing this. So you have to fill this out. I need to know what happens. So I did that. And then when I got a script together, some good friends of ours who, Gavin and Sarah Booth, who moved down here about the same time we did, there's all kinds of interconnectivity within the Canadian film industry. So Neil and Sarah had worked together on a sci-fi show. I I ended up meeting Gavin. Gavin and I actually ended up going on set the same day. So we ended up having lunch together. We discussed some things. Sarah had a play going on at the same time. So we all and we were all making plans to kind of head down to LA together. Not together, but found out that it was happening at the same time. So so they were in town. I sent it to them. I knew that Gavin's sense of humor is very similar, so I knew he would get it. And Sarah's just amazing. Like she's just on board to help, to give feedback, to do whatever needs to be done. So when I sent it to them, I was like, "How would you feel about directing it?" And he's like, "Yeah." Like Gavin kind of says yes to everything, or almost everything. If it's good, he'll say yes. And then next thing you know, we were like, "Oh, sorry, I'm bumping my thing here." Neil, my husband, was like, "Okay, well now we got to make it." So I was like, "Okay, I guess this is where we crowdfund, like cue the crowdfunding." Yeah. So we put together a little campaign. We raised a little bit of money to shoot it. We shot it. Kind of. The post-production process was, a little crunch, but we got, Gavin has a great team that he gave us access to. So, and then it, came together, and we're really happy with, like, especially for our first project for us, it was really, really gratifying, super tiring and so much to learn. But after we finished it, it was really hard to go back to just auditioning.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it feels like that, and again, I'm not speaking from experience, so you can either confirm or shoot this down. But if I feel like there'd be a difference between just acting in something and actually directing and producing at something. Like for me, I'm a writer by trade, and for me, like my books are my babies because I've created everything about it. Whereas, it's different than somebody is just that. An editor. They've been part of the book, but it's not their book. You know what I mean? So to me, that would be the difference between an actor in a film and somebody who's actually directing, producing this thing. It would be like, it's mine.
Yeah. That was, I knew that I really wanted, for my first experience doing this, I knew I was going to make a lot of mistakes. And I also had to know that the script and the story was in the hands of somebody I trusted. And the whole team was super trustworthy because everybody had been, there were some people that I had met for the first time in putting the team together, but it was either Gavin had worked with this cinematographer several times before. Sarah had connections to a couple of people. Another person was somebody that my husband had worked with on a short film before. And then just a lot of our friends came to help us over the 2 days that we were shooting. So having a team that I trusted was really, really important.
Oh, that's key.
And because I also knew that they were going to be patient with the mistakes that I was going to make.
Right.
And and it is, I felt very confident about the way that it was written, and it's not like we didn't shoot it exactly as scripted, but like there were a few elements in the opening scene that just ended up changing. I also had a helicopter in the version that I wrote, but you can't get a helicopter on a $5,000 budget. So so there were some things that changed, like minor little things. And when we were giving over, kind of stepping out of the producer role and into the actor role for both me and my husband was, a couple of times we had to keep ourselves in check and say, okay, no, this is Gavin's the director and we have to let go and know that he has got this.
Right.
So when there were some little changes and stuff like that, I didn't have to think for very long to say like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll make that change for sure.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that separation anxiety. Like I felt like we were all working together. I didn't feel like I was giving it, even though I was giving it to somebody that I knew kind of had the same, a similar vision, just more expansive than mine was.
Right. Now, having somebody you can actually get to that place, because that's not an easy thing to do. Just to let go of a project that means very much to you and say, all right, you do it. That would be tough. But good that you had people around you that you felt comfortable enough to do that with, for. What do you do when you're not acting, producing, and directing, just for fun?
Well, I haven't directed yet. I haven't directed film yet, so I'm kind of feeling my way around. I'm trying to learn a little bit more about cinematography. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing kind of my own research on that. And I also have I have several projects actually that I'm working on writing. So one is a series that's sort of based on some of the elements in Are You My Mommy, mm-hmm. Which is a big project, so it feels a little daunting. The other one is a feature film that I've just finished outlining and I'm just starting to write the script. And then I have a couple of short film ideas and a short scene that I've written because I want to start getting my feet wet in the directing mm-hmm. arena. So those are something that I will probably keep pretty self-contained and maybe just shoot a scene with like my husband and one of my friends in our house. Yeah. So I've been kind of parsing my time and energy between all of these projects. And then one of my hobbies that I've just recently gotten back into in a bigger way is sewing. I've been sewing since I was 9 years old, and so I've just recently gotten back into clothes making, and that keeps me off the computer, keeps me off my phone, keeps me from stressing because I have complete creative control and I know how to do everything from beginning to end. So that's another pastime of mine.
Well, if you have the patience for sewing, you're going to have the patience for like directing, for example. I hope so. No, I think you're going to be great. If you could play, just going back to acting for a minute, if you could play any character in a movie, who would that be?
Wow. That's really a tough one because I'm not somebody who likes to, I feel the same way with movie roles as I do about music. It's really hard to sell me on a remake. And I don't tend to look at other performances in I could have done that better way, or I would have done that differently.
Well, that's healthy.
I think so. It just seems weird because that's already been defined. And that's that incarnation of it. So I'm trying to think of a character. I mean, there are a couple of Shakespeare characters I would love to play. I've always wanted, even though it's not a huge role, but I really love the role of Portia in Julius Caesar. I'm very covetous of Olivia Colman's career. Several of the roles that she has done. I mean, I loved her in Broadchurch. I really loved The Favorite. And I loved her role in one of my favorite series is Fleabag. And
yes,
that's again that kind of. I tend toward British comedy. I guess. And just her role, the breadth of the stuff that she has done, and just the little things that she does with those roles, like that's the kind of actor I would like to be. And so those are the kinds of roles that I was like, oh man, she made the most of that. That's what I would want. Yeah. That's exactly what I would want to do with that character. So I know that doesn't answer your question exactly.
No, that's totally fine. I don't
know how to answer the question.
Yeah, I will. That answer will be accepted.
Thank you.
So I know one of these days, I can see you creating your own show similar to something like Fleabag. You can play the main character in it. I think that would be a good goal to shoot for there. Just I don't know.
That is on my list. Definitely.
So up to this point, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Making Are You My Mommy? Mm-hmm. I know I waver back and forth between thinking, like, sort of the minute I think, wow, that's something that I had the seed of an idea, and now that is something that's out in the world. That is a done thing that people are watching, that people are having great reaction to, that people are receiving really well. And I'm super proud of that. So that's probably right now my greatest achievement in terms of seeing something through to an end that I didn't really see as possible when I first started, typing out the first page.
Right. Yeah.
So that's definitely in. And then immediately what creeps in right behind that is, yeah, but everybody makes a short film. That's not big of a deal. So I have to quiet that little voice. And so I'm very proud of that. Also, I feel very, a big accomplishment, I think, for me and my husband, Neil, is making the move to LA.
Yeah, no, that's incredible.
Yeah, like my husband was born and raised in Montreal. I was in Montreal for 25 years, and we did a brief little stint in Toronto, just to sort of a puddle jump move, because Toronto is a bigger market, because we both were having, a decent, successful career in Montreal, and really, really loved our friends and family that were there. And so, moving to Toronto was one thing, and it kind of eased the separation a bit. And then deciding to make the move to LA really so late in our career was also a risky but necessary jump for us, because work in industry wasn't the only reason that we moved down here. Part of it was I just couldn't do any more winters.
Oh, I hear you there.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah, it got harder and harder every year. It felt like they got longer and longer every year.
I am convinced that's the truth.
Yeah, and it was starting to really kind of wear on my mental health, and and a little bit on my physical health as well. And moving down here has made a really big difference in that. And also, and I don't know if I would have actually considered moving to the other side of the camera or making these choices that I'm starting to make in my life and my career now, had we stayed comfortable in Canada.
And it's
not to say it's not difficult. It is. It's just always, it's a difficult career. That's everywhere. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But really getting out of our comfort zone was a big deal.
Yeah, I was just thinking that what you said, where there's something about making ourselves uncomfortable that leads us to do things perhaps that we never thought we could do or never thought of doing even in the first place. But just getting out of that comfort zone, by definition, I think challenges us. And some people like yourself rise to the challenge and really show what they can do. So I think that's great. Absolutely. So just kind of a silly question, I guess. What is your idea of the perfect Sunday afternoon?
Ooh, perfect Sunday afternoon. I would wake up well rested. After not having woken up 7 times during the night.
Right.
So I would wake up well rested. I would do my morning ritual of meditation and coffee, and then it would be a beautiful sunny day that's not too hot, and is maybe warm with a light, cool breeze. I would probably go for a hike with my husband, and then we'd come back into town and have lunch at one of our favorite little lunch spots, or have lunch in a new little spot. And then, then what else would I do? I might spend some time in my sewing room. Working on something new, and then we'd have an amazing dinner, and probably watch a movie.
That sounds perfect.
Sounds really boring.
No, it does not. It sounds amazing. I'd sign up for that, definitely.
Yeah, it's all the little things, and it really is. And the thing is, they're all accessible. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Paula Jean Hixson, thanks so much for joining us on the Games and Writers Show. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. This was a blast. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.